US. This is amazing, amazing, amazing news. Now, I'm sure you've, heard officially of the official Honda, Nissan, and Mitsubishi partnership. These three Japanese car companies that are currently around today they're not officially joining together, but they're officially collecting their resources to to develop EVs. Now, I think that this will be a colossal failure. I think that no one wants EVs, and I think that this is a waste of three companies. But this is more important on a different scale. It's not because I'll be too sad if Honda, Mitsubishi, or Nissan are gone, just less competition for Toyota, although neither of them really pose a threat as it is right now. The reason why this is concerning is because of the consolidation of Japanese car markets, right? So, let's look at this diagram that I have. There we go. Car company ownership diagram. There we go. I love it when I'm bombarded with ads. Yeah, visual capitalist. Pretty much the only good diagram you can get, right? So these two have now, merged. FCA and PSA have now merged. So, that's interesting. Car markets are all combining. And that is bad, just because we need more competition, right? When there's only 14 car companies that control 54 brands, that's very, very bad. Now that FCA and PSA have formed together to make Stellantis, which is, of course, going to fail, that's bad. Very bad. One big gigantic group. Not too great. Geely now owns Volvo, which is interesting, instead of Ford, which means Ford only has two brands. This is bad, and especially look at the Japanese car companies. Toyota and Honda, now that Honda, Nissan, and Mitsubishi are all teaming up, I mean, no more competition. There's none. No competition whatsoever. Honda and Nissan, right, so already PSA and FCA have already merged together, so that's 13 car companies. Now Honda, Nissan, and Mitsubishi are going to team up. That's going to be 12. 12 car companies combined with only almost with pretty much only two of them being Japanese. That is terrible. Now, again, Honda and Nissan and Mitsubishi are not completely forming an alliance. They're not forming into one big company because yada, 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 monopoly laws, yada, 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 competition. But, when something like this happens, when companies combine their resources together to, make one, not as a brand, but when they combine the resources to make something, the brands usually use more than just what they're developing. I wouldn't be surprised if Mitsubishi uses Honda stuff. And guess what? In the past couple days, someone made a post on Reddit. I don't know if this is official information, but supposedly Mitsubishi plans on just using Nissan platforms by 2030. And that's terrible. Mitsubishi is in a great spot right now. They're manufacturing their own cars. They're starting to sell. Things are going well, and they're going to ruin it all by going back to Nissan for some reason. So, Suzuki, are they going to re-enter the US? And if they did, exactly how would I recommend they do it? Now, keep in mind, I am not a car journalist. I am not a car person at all. At the very least, I am a consumer, and I know what I would like to buy. And I can tell kind of what I think would succeed in the U.S. and what wouldn't, right? So Suzuki announced its plan to return to North American market. Again, this came out April 1st, 2022, right? So they talk about how they left and about how it might open as soon as February 9th, 2023, right? Now, there are a lot of, different sites going on here, right? Will Suzuki revive if they ever came to the U.S.? This is the GR Corolla forum, and it's Suzuki killed off the Suzuki Samurai due to its reputation being shattered after the infamous report. Yada, 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 yada. I don't understand well, but there's a lot of controversy, right? Suzuki officially does have plans to return to the North American market. I don't know if that means Canada and the U.S., or if they just mean the U.S., or they just mean Canada. It's not really important, right? As long as they're returning to the sector, all I care about is if they go into the U.S., because that could be very, very good, because I think one of the worst things that could ever happen to the car market is if we combine car companies more than they already are. PSA and FSA forming together was already bad enough, with FSA owning this monster of car companies and PSA being indifferent. That's a mega giant. Now, thankfully, the leadership is complete potatoes and have no idea how to run a car company, which is why it's not doing so well, and they're also demanding EVs out of a car company that wasn't even able to sell normal cars. So I don't assume that that partnership is going to go too well, but it's never a good thing when car companies merge together. Very, very bad. Right? This is very, very bad. The consolidation is never good. In the 90s, we used to have Suzuki, Isuzu, so many smaller Japanese car companies, right? So there's different waves, right? The Japanese wave of car makers is over. Now it's China, right, with the EVs. The entire EV market is dumb, and I think it could come crashing down overnight, but that's not the point. That's not what we're talking about here, right? My biased opinion on EVs does not need to be shared on this channel because I think that they're stupid and way over-marketed. Doesn't matter. So, think about the 90s, right? The first wave, let's back up a little bit. The 1970s, the first wave of Japanese car companies. You had Toyota, Honda, and then later on, smaller car companies like Mitsubishi, Isuzu, and Suzuki coming in trying to make cars, right? They were all here at the same time, but only two car companies really picked up during that time, Honda and Toyota. Now, by the 1990s, Nissan had also gained some traction, which means officially 3 of those car companies, congratulations, you won the war. Toyota overall won the war, Nissan won a few battles, Honda won more battles than Nissan. Nissan was the loser, Toyota was the winner, Honda was in the middle. That's kind of how this all went, right? But they were established brands, and that's what's important, right? And then, right, finally, in about, the late 90s, Suzuki started to pick up in the U.S. Isuzu started to work with GM to get their cars out there. Honda was, in fact, using a Suzuki model to come out with the Passport. I made a video on that if you want to see it. So essentially, right, those are how many car companies that we used to have. And now, unfortunately, due to the economic crash of 2008, people just stopped buying cars altogether. And for a car company like Toyota, Honda, and Nissan, that was rough. People just weren't buying cars. They had no money to make. That was very, very rough for them, right? But at the same time, it almost killed off Mitsubishi. It got Isuzu in 2007. It got Suzuki in 2013. And Mitsubishi, by 2017... they were feeling it, right? They almost, skin of their teeth, right out of bankruptcy, just almost entered it and then said, hey, we're not going to pull out, we're just going to make it. And the Mitsubishi Outlander Sport was a cheap crossover at the right time, right vehicle, sold well, got them mainly out of bankruptcy, so to where they could make other models like the Mirage and get more money and, keep making stuff. So, that's important, and I think Suzuki coming back to the U.S. could be great. Now, I am not going to make this the main point of the video, but I would stinking love to see Toyota pick up Suzuki. Not pick them up like Subaru, right? Toyota doesn't own Subaru, but Toyota owns a decent amount of Subaru. I would love Toyota to invest in Suzuki. They could share parts. Subaru could use Toyota's hybrid system, which I believe they're already doing. And that would be great, right? So now let's tackle the second question. If Suzuki was coming to the U.S., what vehicles should they bring over? So I have Suzuki Australia's vehicles list. I'm just going to base it off of that. That seems like where they have a decent amount of vehicles, and I think some of those could make it in the U.S., right? So this is Suzuki's current lineup, right? You have the Swift. The Swift is like their main car, right? You have the Swift Hybrid, the regular Swift, and then the Swift Sport. You also have the Ignis, right? The Vitara, the S-Cross, and the Jimny. That's pretty much all of their vehicles. That's really all they really have. Let's do a little range overview, right? So, which one of these cars do I think would make it in the U.S.? And exactly how would I change it, right? If I were CEO, right? Because again, I don't know a lot, but it seems like a lot of the people in charge of Honda, Nissan don't actually know what the consumers want, and I'm a consumer. So, not that bad. So, to start off, let's look at Suzuki's lineup in the prime, right? 2008, I believe they hit their prime. I would bring back the names, right? Remember, there's a lot of cars coming into the U.S. or just being imagined, like every single, essentially, right? The Nissan Kicks, that name hasn't existed before. The entirety of Kia and Hyundai have never existed before. They're all just made up names. They have no history for the most part, right? Generalization statement. So, exactly why would I want to bring, these names to the U.S. with different cars? Just because Suzuki is in uncharted territory. First of all, they don't want to blow all their money, so you want people to buy their cars. And let's say my mom owned a Suzuki Grand Vitara. If Suzuki came in with the Vitara, right, she'd say, oh, it's not grand, right? But if they came out with the Grand Vitara, she'd be like, oh my God, Suzuki brought it back, I have to buy this, And also, it's not going to hurt them, right? The SX4, the XL7, and the Grand Vitara don't have bad reputations. Not at all, I think. I think they actually have very good reputations for being strong, reliable, good cars, right? So it can't hurt Suzuki because the names are actually good and they are tied to very good vehicles, right? It can only help them by bringing in buyers of the past, fallen models. So exactly what models would I bring over from Australia? I'm just going with Australia here because I think it's the simplest, right? So let's just start, right? The Ignis. The Ignis is an ultra compact adventurer, right? This is supposed to be kind of like, imagine it as if it's like a tiny little off-roader designed for Australia. That's what it's designed to be. I think the Ignis has an absolutely amazing chance at making it in the US. You want to know why? First of all, it's very tough to give cars a name without insulting the new model, right? So, 2008, there's a lot of names floating around, and let's say, Toyota brought the Venza back as a small hatchback. That would be insulting. That's not what the Venza is. They're just trying to blatantly use the name. But I think the Ignis could seriously fit in with the SX4. Seriously. I mean, literally, right? Considering they only make 2 different models, which, I'm not complaining about at all, right? I think this, look at its shape. Now, I would definitely swap it over to 5 lug nuts, period, just because it looks prettier that way, and the car looks like it deserves 5 lug nuts and just didn't get them. The Ignis looks like a modern SX4. Look at the SX4, look at the Ignis. The Ignis is essentially the SX4 that would be amazing in the US, especially if they can get the price as cheap as it is in Australia. I believe this is in Australian dollars, I'm not sure. Even if it's in American dollars, that's pretty stinking good for a new car, right? Now, the Ignis is actually pretty interesting. I actually like this car, It's actually not a bad car at all. The Ignis is kind of like what people want, right? A cheap off-road, a cheap off-road car, right? And that's exactly what I think a lot of people want out of it. It has a sporty, flashy, nice interior that would fit in perfectly, right? Now, I do think the compact dashboard would be a little bit bad. I would extend that gauge cluster, just make it look more normal. We don't want anything that weird, but other than that, I think it could be great. So the Ignis would come back to the US if I was the, one in charge as the SX4. That would be how that goes, right? Next, let's move into our next vehicle. We want to fit in the Grand Vitara. So what vehicle are we going to bring in as the Grand Vitara? The Vitara, come on, it perfectly fits, right? So the Vitara just looks like an updated version of the Grand Vitara. You have to admit it looks exactly like the Vitara, and you can see they're pushing it pretty hard. Smart Tech looks like a great interior. We wouldn't have to update it that much. Plenty of safety, which means it would definitely meet American road standards. Perfect, 5 lug nuts. I have no complaints with it. We can definitely see there's the Vitara Turbo, and the Vitara All Grip. Very good cars. Very good cars. This would be the new Grand Vitara, right? So the Grand Vitara was known for being this little, kind of rinky-dink SUV, kind of fitting in with, the RAV4s and CRVs of the world, but being a little bit overinflated. This just looks like a brand, an updated version of the Grand Vitara, so this would come in. Plus, again, the only reason why we're not bringing up the Renault or the Frenza, people don't buy wagons anymore, people don't buy sedan hatchback things anymore. They buy sedans that look like off-roaders that look like off-roaders, and family cars that look like off-roaders. Americans really like off-roaders. So, the Grand Vitara would definitely come back as the Vitara would definitely come back as the Grand Vitara. Now, they also have this car called the S-Cross, which is very, very interesting. Now, it's very, in my opinion, Mitsubishi-like styling, but it's a very, very good car. So exactly where would this fit in the lineup? Exactly where would I put this in the lineup if I want to bring it to the US? Ooh, I always love a good 360. That doesn't work at all. Great. Okay. Yeah. Oh, wow. So it's just a picture. Oh, no, I can move around. That's pretty good. Can I click on it? Yes, I can. Wow. So this car, I feel like, would be perfect for the US, just because it could be the new XL7. It could be Suzuki's family car. And it certainly doesn't help that it looks like a Subaru Outback. It certainly helps that it looks like a Subaru Outback. And with that amazing storage, trunk space, I think it would fit great in the US. Now, the wheels need some changing, and the front is kind of hideous, but I think Suzuki should definitely make a return to the US. Suzuki is an amazing car company, and they already have so many great models, right? Why would Suzuki not come back when they have so many great foreign models that they could bring to the US? So just to keep you up to speed, we would bring the Ignis back as the SX4, the Vitara as the Grand Vitara, the S-Cross as the XL7, the Jimny. I would bring the Jimny to the US, but in one trim level in very limited numbers. It would have to be pretty much their cheapest vehicle. We are going base, and I mean base. Ultra base, nothing fancy. I mean, I'm talking straight do. You know, I'm making a joke here, but you know what I mean. Because I don't think it's going to sell well. There are so many other American cars, you know, like, one thing you have to learn about American buyers, right? In foreign markets, more like Australia and the UK, they care if a car is good, unless it's French, in the UK only. But in America, we care about car brands, oddly enough. Now, it may seem to you like I'm a Toyota fanboy, and oh yeah, I just love Toyota, I refuse to look at any other models, which is somewhat true, but that's just because, in my opinion, Toyota makes the best product. It's not because I'm in love with Toyota, it's just because I appreciate all the work that they put into their cars, and usually their cars are better than the competition anyway, right? But I think the Jimny could seriously succeed in the US. Now, with that being said, people don't want actual off-roaders. They want smaller cars that are pretending to be off-roaders, and the Jimny is a true-blooded off-roader, which means I don't think it would sell great, and I don't expect it to sell well, but it definitely should come to the US. This car has a buyer, the Jeep, what I like to call the Jeep buyer. Now, why would the Jeep buyer consider buying from a different non-American car company? Because it's perfect, right? Jeep people are probably going from a $14,000 used Jeep Renegade, finding out that their transmission is cack, and that Chrysler, well, you know, yeah, Chrysler, refuses to pay for it because the car is out of warranty. That's what happens to every single Jeep owner. I have known so many people that have had Jeeps, and not a single one of them have driven them all the way through. They have all either sold them due to defects or ended up just abandoning them just because they completely fell apart, right? And let's say you are a Jeep buyer and you're looking for a replacement for your Jeep. If we market the Jimny as a Jeep replacement, it's perfect. It's cheaper than a Jeep. It's more off-road capable than a Jeep. And if we do the marketing just right, we can even make it cooler than the Jeep. Jeep is losing footing. Stellantis has no idea to react. If we seriously upstage them, well, I'm not in charge of anything. If Suzuki seriously upstaged them, that would be awful. Stellantis would have zero reaction to that because they're too busy in La La Land making EVs. That would be great. And the Jimny could gain the new, cool, modern Jeep thing, you know? That'd be great. It's rugged and it's an actual off-roader. So when people go off-road, they're not going to find out that their Jeep Renegade is just a Fiat Panda. They're going to find out that this car kicks ass. And that's exactly what we want it to do. Now, I would only bring the Jimny XL and the regular Jimny here. The Jimny Light, I think I would also bring, right? The Jimny doesn't have that many trim levels. I think all of them are pretty well fitted. It's kind of like the iPhone, right? Different trim levels for different people. The Jimny definitely has to go to the US, and since its name already has such an amazing reputation in foreign countries, we're keeping the name Jimny. Now, the Swift Hybrid is the only other car I would bring over. I would convert it to 5 lug nuts. It definitely needs to be 5 lug nuts. But if Mitsubishi, here's the perfect thing, right? I wouldn't bring the Swift Hybrid. Now, remember, why would I bring the Swift Hybrid over and not the regular Swift, right? If people want cheap cars, why would I bring the most expensive version of the Swift? Because it's going to be our hybrid. It's going to be when people bitch and whine about, you not have an EV. We can talk about this Swift and say, hey, we have a hybrid. Perfectly new technology. It would fit in perfectly with the lineup, you know? And, you know, since this car looks, I mean, look at it. It looks so much like an Ignis, very similar to an Ignis. This could just be the non-off-road Ignis. I highly doubt people would buy it, but people aren't buying sedans in general just because they've been burned by them, just like how people aren't buying Jeeps because they've been burned by them, right? You know, people don't buy things once you've been screwed over once. Screw me once, shame on you. Screw me twice, I'm not going to let you screw me twice, because this car sucks and I'm just going to buy another one. This car is preying on the ground of another car. the Mitsubishi Mirage. Now, if you don't know, again, like I said before, Mitsubishi is teaming up with kind of garbage and then hot steaming pile of crap. Okay, Honda. Yes, they made some very reliable vehicles. Whenever I call Honda garbage or Nissan garbage, I judge them purely on the cars that they currently make. I'm not judging them on their history. I think Honda and Nissan have both made great, reliable cars in the past. You have to admit they make some stinkers now, right? If Mitsubishi lets their quality decline by letting Nissan give them their platforms, which suck, and their CVTs, which also suck, right? And remember, this partnership, I think the main bad reason is because we're condensing the Japanese car market, which is already very condensed, into, it's like orange juice, right? You buy that condensed orange juice in that little cup, right? Imagine the 2000s Japanese car market was like regular orange juice. You pour it in a cup, you drink it. Wow, that's so much, it's great. This current Japanese car market is like those tubes that you can get where you just pour water and sugar in and then you get juice. If this ends up happening and they end up officially teaming up, which it seems like they already have, then it's going to be so condensed where it's going to be an ice cube where you add one drop of water and all of a sudden it fills an entire swimming pool. That's how condensed it's going to be. And if Suzuki coming back is good, and that could be amazing. Why? Because not all car brands are perfect, right? Nissan isn't perfect. Their CVT transmissions suck and they don't know how to admit when they're wrong. Honda has a great reputation, but they're bored of making good vehicles. They want to make something radically new, and they're probably going to screw it up just like they did with the Insight. And Mitsubishi is striding to be one of the big Japanese car makers. So why do the work when you can just partner with the two of the biggest ones, right? Why not? So that's going to condense it, right? If Suzuki comes in, Toyota does a partnership with them, maybe gives them some hybrid technology, that could be seriously great. And, I love Suzuki. Whenever I do a car build, I usually pick the Suzuki. I recommended a lot of Suzukis when they came out just because they had been all ironed out, flattened out. They were very reliable cars. I think they should definitely re-enter the U.S. Now is the perfect time. No car brand is perfect, right? Honda and Nissan by themselves are two completely different car companies. Honda is bad for different reasons. Honda's bad because they know how to build things right. They just don't want to in the terms of cost cutting, money saving, and we can make more models cheaply rather than making less models well. And Nissan's bad because their transmission and engines are known to spontaneously combust. Obviously, I'm joking. The CVT just sucks, the Altima sucks, and the engines aren't extremely reliable. Now, those two car companies on their own are very quirky because they have different traits. If both of them become one, then Nissan's going to inherit Honda's badness, and Honda's going to inherit Nissan's badness. Just like how Toyota inherited some of Subaru's sloppy workmanship for about 2 years there. And Subaru got that weird Toyota styling that they're introducing now. Ugh. Anyway, whenever you merge car companies, they're like... Chrysler, their issue was reliability. Jeep, their issue was build quality. Ram, their issue was marketing. And Dodge's issue was all of the above. Merging all those crappy car companies into one made Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, and Dodge collectively worse because instead of having one major problem, they had the major problems of all the other car companies. That's why I said earlier, right, if this official car thing is just for making EVs, that's fine. But if they let Honda bleed into Mitsubishi, Mitsubishi into Honda, Nissan into Mitsubishi, Mitsubishi into Nissan, and Nissan into Honda, and Honda into Nissan, then they're essentially, I don't care about if they're not officially one company, but if they let each other bleed, then they will be. It's never been a more perfect time for Suzuki to enter the U.S. Now, a lot of people would say this, and they would think that I'm crazy. Why? Because instead of going up against smaller Honda, smaller Nissan, or smaller Mitsubishi, they're going up against stronger together, right? They're going up against, instead of just fighting Honda separately, Nissan separately, and Mitsubishi separately, they're fighting them all together. So it becomes 3 small little bosses into one big gigantic mega boss. But at the same time, that boss is weaker because it's inherited all the weaknesses of the smaller little mobs and bosses and whatever. Same with Toyota. Toyota's not immune from this. Ford's not immune from this. GM definitely is immune from this, although they've sucked since the beginning. And Hyundai hasn't really existed all that long, so I don't really have an opinion on them, although that I hate them. But, that's unrelated, right? It's perfect for Suzuki to come back into the US. Because again, Honda's going to get a little bit worse from this deal. Mitsubishi's going to get a little bit worse from this deal. So will Nissan. And when they get a little bit worse, their customers are going to be shocked. They're going to be like, oh, what's going on with this, right? Now, not having history is a bad thing, right? People don't know your brand. They don't know what the brand is like. Suzuki is in the perfect situation. They were known for being reliable when they were in the US, and they've been gone for long enough for, if anyone had bad experiences, they're more likely to forget the bad and remember the good about the Suzuki than, forget the good and remember the bad, unless they're a very negative person. Which means Suzuki is perfect. Suzuki hasn't burned anyone in years, which makes them the ideal decision. If you're going for a car brand, right, just some random car brand out there, right? You've been screwed over by your Jeep, and you're looking for a replacement. Now, you may look at Toyota, right? Toyota looks pretty reliable. They're Japanese. You want something reliable, go Japanese. And then you hear that the FJ Cruiser's burned oil. Boom, not going to buy a Toyota anymore. You look for the Honda. The Honda Pilot is out of your price range. Boom, Honda's officially unaffordable in your mind. You look at Nissans, find out that their CVTs suck. Boom, bad. And then you look into the Suzuki Jimny. It was never sold in the US, but it was made by a brand with great reviews, which means you're more likely to buy it. Suzuki is at the perfect point where if they entered the US, they would be just well known enough where people would buy their vehicles, but not unknown enough where people would be leery. It's perfect. And every other car company, like this crappy partnership, really a marriage in hell, or whatever the hell Stellantis is supposed to be. Again, all those car companies are weaker, and it's going to take them, I'm guessing, 5 years to work out all the kinks of this deal. And I'm guessing their EVs are going to catch fire. I'm sorry. Some things just shouldn't happen. I'm not saying that EVs burn up. I'm saying a lot of car companies are lazy. They don't want to do EVs right. That's why they all catch on fire. Now, I'll do that, later. I'll talk about that later. But essentially, the moral of the story is, I think, keep in mind, please feel free to tell me about how terrible and awful I am and about how I am wrong about everything, because I assure you I probably am. But to me, my little, my nugget-sized brain, this seems perfect. Let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And I actually have a lot of fun making these videos. I know it seems like I don't, but I actually really do. Like, top 10 favorite things to do.